Welcome back, everybody, to Watcher of All Things. My name is Kiki, and this is my podcast where I talk movies, TV shows, and all things entertainment. And today, it is episode 65, where we are talking Warfare, the newest action film from Alex Garland, as well as he actually co-directed this film with Ray Mendoza. We're going to dive into it. Is it as apolitical as Civil War? Action-packed? How does it compare to the other film? What does it mean in this movie? It's a very different episode from Minecraft last week, I'll say that. A bit of tonal whiplash, but I hope you are all doing well. Lots of IMAX happening this week. Actually, I saw the Superman trailer 3 times in IMAX this week, finally, after months of not seeing it once. I'm seeing a lot of IMAX movies, and The Amateur is out, which just came out in IMAX, so I think the Superman movie is going to be really taking that slot, and it's fun seeing a trailer for a movie that you're excited for. Like, I'm loving the Superman, Mission Impossible, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four lineup, but let's get to today. A couple things before we hop into Warfare. On the socials, I dropped some fun reviews, including a White Lotus finale reaction, which we'll talk about a bit today, but I'm also in my April YouTube video. We are going to be talking my favorite TV shows of 2025 so far. Lots of stuff to chew on there. I'm excited to drop that on April 30th, I want to say, the last day of April. So look forward to that on the YouTube channel, as well as for today, timestamps below. If you don't want to know anything about Warfare, just stick to the non-spoiler section if you're okay with knowing non-spoilers, because I keep it very non-spoilery and just talk broad things from the trailer. I watched the trailer right before this, so I remember what's in it. But before we get to all of that, we have lots of news to cover, so let's do it. Let's jump into the news. All right, well, on the back of the success of the Minecraft movie, or a Minecraft movie, I should say, which, dear God, it is absolutely soaring. I think it's probably going to pass 1 billion, maybe, I don't know. It depends if this whole TikTok trend thing where everyone goes and trashes their theater while watching. It depends if that dies out in like the next week. I think if it keeps momentum and they just keep it in theaters, it'll pass 1 billion. Like, I would say it probably hits 1.1 just, or it stays at 900 million. But on the back of the success of that movie, Paramount has announced Angry Birds 3 will be flying to theaters in 2027. Previous 2 movies were released in 2016 and 2019 by Sony and grossed a combined $500 million at the global box office. So not a crazy, grossing films. They're not this mega franchise. And I think like the quality of the Angry Birds movie, I don't know, there's the Rotten Tomatoes top 10 video game movies. I was looking at that the other day because I was thinking maybe for the YouTube channel this month we would watch some video game movies, but I was like, oh man, these are all like very bad and poorly rated, and I don't feel like just watching a bunch of shit movies, and like it's not fun to just tear movies apart for an entire video. I want to talk about things I enjoy and I'm passionate about. But the Angry Birds movies, I'm pretty sure Angry Birds 2 was in like the top 10 on Rotten Tomatoes, and I was like, I don't know if I've ever seen the Angry Birds movies. I've seen those trailers and I was like, what the hell are we doing? But I have some other animated movies I need to watch as well, like the How to Train Your Dragon movies. I've never seen those, and I want to watch them all before the live action one comes out. Same with Lilo and Stitch. I've probably not seen since I was, 8 years old. So I got a bunch of stuff that I need to watch. But as for Angry Birds 3, voice cast includes Jason Sudeikis, Josh Gad, Rachel Bloom, Danny McBride, as well as some new additions who are Emma Myers from a Minecraft movie, Keke Palmer, Tim Robinson, my boy, good for him, get that bag, Tim, Lily James, Marcelo Hernandez from SNL, Walker Scoble, who's a very funny comedian, Sam Richardson, my other boy from I Think You Should Leave, and Detroiters, Anna Cathcart, Matreyi Ramakrishnan, Nikki Glazer, James Austin Johnson, and Palm West. Dang, that's actually a crazy cast. But remember when we used to employ actual voice actors? Like, I feel like animated movies used to actually get voice actors, or animated TV shows at least, but now it's just famous people get thrown on screen, which it's fine, but like kids aren't going to care, so why don't you let some voice actors get a chance? That's why it was kind of fun to see a Looney Tunes movie where like the guy who voices Daffy Duck and Porky Pig, he's actually from Canada. He's from Scarborough, I want to say, which is just outside Toronto. So it's cool that he's the new voice of Bugs Bunny and all of these guys, and he does a great job at it. Like Looney Tunes, if you haven't seen The Day the Earth Blew Up, the new Looney Tunes movie, that's a lot of fun. If I'm recommending a family movie, I'm recommending that one over a Minecraft movie all day. Angry Birds 3 coming out. Let's hop into another story that made me so excited this week, / a little bit scared, but mostly excited. Deadline Deadline is reporting Dune 3 Legendary is circling Robert Pattinson for new role in the upcoming installment. So there was long rumors in like 2022, 2021 that Denis Villeneuve really wanted Robert Pattinson for Feyd-Rautha, but he got Austin Butler for the role, or maybe Robert Pattinson was circling the project, but Batman duties or something like that. He couldn't commit to it. Well, it looks like this year he's going to fit into the role of the Dune Messiah villain, Skytale or Saitale. I don't know. The audiobooks and lots of different versions pronounce it differently, but Saitale, who is a face dancer, so he shapeshifts and he's the villain of Dune Messiah. I don't want to say anything about Dune Messiah because I don't want people to get it spoiled for them. I think it's really fun. As a Dune fan going into that movie, super blind from whatever they're going to show in the trailers, I think just stick to that. I think this is a great choice. I was very excited for this role, and he's a face dancer, so he shapeshifts and he takes on different voices and stuff. I think that's a really good role for Robert Pattinson, who just did Mickey 17, which is a bunch of different personalities and being goofy, but in general, like Good Time, The Lighthouse. This guy loves putting on a freaky little voice. Now, apparently there's been no formal offer presented, but there is strong interest in Robert Pattinson joining the cast. Denis Villeneuve, even in an interview in 2022 at, I don't know what event it was, but he talked about how he would love to work with Robert in the future. He's worked with Timothée Chalamet before on The King. I could see it happening, and it would fit his schedule. There is a little bit of panic caused because he's filming right now. He's filming The Odyssey in Italy. They just saw photos of him in Italy filming. Then he's, after The Odyssey, going to go right into this if he were to join, and that's going to film until the end of the year when the Batman Part 2 would pick up. At first, I was a little bit worried because everyone has said the Batman Part 2 filming at the end of the year. Dune Messiah is going to be filming from this summer to the end of the year, so it's going to be a tight turnaround, and he would be busy all year, and it's a lot, and it's me starting to get a little bit worried about the Batman Part 2. I know Matt Reeves is going through some personal stuff that hasn't been publicly disclosed, and it's only been rumors online, so I don't really want to talk about that. He's going through personal stuff that apparently has been very hard, and once you hear like what it is, it's like, oh, okay, I see why all the delays are happening. So there's also another character who is a guild navigator, I believe, Endrick. I sort of want to go back and reread Dune Messiah. I might start it again this week, maybe this time with an audiobook to keep me on track so I can read it a little bit faster, but it is my second favorite Dune book, I would say. If I would go Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor, or maybe flip those two, and then the last two I was like, I don't really care about these, they're not very good, but Scytale would be a really good role for him. I could see him easily going into that shapeshifter role, and he's just like a little bastard, but he has so many good quotes from Scytale. He's a great character, and I can't wait to see him in live action. But moving into another story, Adolescence Season 2 ? Brad Pitt's Plan B are in talks with creators over follow-up to Netflix smash hit. Now, Adolescence, I watched it last weekend. I absolutely loved it. Spoke about it in the episode last week, episode 64. Go check it out if you haven't listened. It's a great show, but what I loved about it is how contained it was, and it was a singular thing. So Deadline is saying that in their first interview since Adolescence went off like a firework last month, Plan B co-presidents Dede Gardner and Jeremy Kleiner told Deadline that they are speaking to director Philip Bartini about the next iteration of the show. Now, there is a few ways that this could go. Do they stick with the story of Jamie, who is the focus of the first season, as well as his family, or do they go to another like similar crime, like a knife crime in the UK? What's the deal here? I think this is not a great idea. I like that it's a limited series. Like, just keep it to one season and move on to a new project. They're going to go to all these award shows and run as a limited series. They need to disclose that, because if they get all these awards as a limited series and take it all away, that would just be depressing, Baby Reindeer, fantastic show, went as a limited series, and then the main guy, Richard Gaffin, something like that, he moved on, and now he has another show coming out on HBO, maybe. It's a limited series. His story was told. He wasn't like, how can I spin this off? But as for Adolescence, I really enjoyed how limited it was and contained to 4 episodes. That was what made it so special to me. I would rather they just move on to another project and completely separate the story, maintain it as a limited series. Another iteration, that could mean that they are just like wanting to tell similar themes, but in another avenue. I could understand that. But as for a season 2, I wouldn't say that it would ruin Adolescence like the first season, but it would definitely take a lot away. It's sort of like The Penguin. I think they should move on and not do a season 2 of The Penguin. I really like that it was a limited series bridging the Batman and the Batman Part 2, and you already have enough going on trying to get the Batman Part 2 made, and it's supposed to be a trilogy. Would we ever get a Part 3? Probably not. And here I go talking about the Batman again. I'm so obnoxious. But Adolescence is a really good show. I'm going to talk about it in my YouTube video this month because it is just something that's so poignant and I think super important to our time. The writing is so good. I would be excited for anything they're going to do as their next project. And speaking of Netflix, actually, Black Mirror returned yesterday. I'm recording this Friday, April 11th at 10:39 a.m. And Black Mirror Season 7, we got 6 new episodes. I've actually seen really positive reactions to them. I'm excited to see the follow-up to the USS Callister. I'm excited for the Paul Giamatti episode. So I think that's maybe going to be my weekend project, is watching Black Mirror. I'll talk about it next week. Maybe I'll do a short video or something like that. I'll definitely talk about it in my YouTube video as well. I love Black Mirror. I think the last, couple seasons haven't been great. Maybe when the Americans took over from like the BBC is when it went downhill a little bit. But that's something I also do want to do, is go back and rewatch Black Mirror. The British are so good at like these limited series or these limited drama, short amount of episode dramas like Baby Reindeer. Black Mirror, every season is like, 6 episodes, 4 episodes, something like that. But as for Adolescence getting a follow-up, I hope it's not a direct follow-up. Give us something else. Give us a whole new story following maybe something that's similar. I hope they shoot it the same way, because all the one-shots and, an episode seemingly being like a one-shot is just fantastic. All right, and our final story before we get into the mega review for Warfare, Variety says that Saturday Night Live is getting a UK edition launching on Sky in 2026. So SNL mastermind Lorne Michaels, who created the original NBC series, will serve as an executive producer for the UK adaptation while continuing to steer the American mothership. The London-based version will follow the same live format that has made SNL a cultural juggernaut for nearly 5 decades. The series is being commissioned by Phil Edgar Jones, executive director of unscripted originals at Sky. But here's what's interesting, and I never realized. Since its 1975 debut, Saturday Night Live has inspired numerous international adaptations, each striving to capture the essence of the original while tailoring content to local audiences. Germany's RTL Samstag Nacht from 1993 to 1998 featured local celebrities and occasionally welcomed American personalities like Mel Brooks and Michael Winslow, though language barriers limited their participation. In Spain, a 2009 adaptation of Cuatro closely mirrored the US format, even replicating original sketches, but it struggled to resonate and was short-lived. Italy's Saturday Night Live from Milano ran from 2006 to 2011, offered original material, finding moderate success. But South Korea's SNL Korea premiered in 2011 on TVN, enjoyed a robust 9-season run with 205 episodes, integrating K-pop elements to appeal to local viewers. The show was rebooted in 2021 as Kupang Play, featuring a mix of returning and new cast members. In Quebec, which I didn't know as a Canadian, we have a French SNL. SNL Quebec aired on Télé-Québec from 2014 to 2015, adapting classic sketches like Sweaty Balls into French before budget cuts led to its cancellation. Russia's 2013 adaptation faced challenges, with low ratings and negative reviews, leading to a rebranded and quietly aired conclusion. In the UK, premiering in 1985 on Channel 4, Saturday Live was often seen as Britain's answer to Saturday Night Live, but the comparison ends at the format. Despite surface similarities, there was no official connection between the two shows. Produced by London Weekend Television (LWT), Saturday Live focused on live stand-up, sketches, and musical performances, serving as a launchpad for a new generation of British comedians. Now, I am a little bit surprised that we don't hear more about these international iterations of Saturday Night Live, because you look at a show like Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy, literally every country has a version of Wheel of Fortune. That's one of my favorite things watching Wheel of Fortune, is when they show the international versions. Wheel of Fortune from Spain, or even Croatia has a version, and it's insane. It's so much fun to see the British version. Graham Norton hosts that. You have the British Jeopardy hosted by Stephen Fry, which I've watched on BBC a few times, and it's no Ken Jennings Jeopardy, but it's still really good. So I am surprised that we haven't had a more popular second version of Saturday Night Live. I think it's just difficult now to maintain a live audience every weekend late at Saturday night. SNL is the only show that can really dominate the late night ratings on Saturday night. So I don't know, this is a big swing. I like it. It's interesting. I do wonder who's going to be on the cast. British people are pretty funny and they do humor pretty well, so I'll definitely check it out. But I think that's going to do it for the news today. So lots of cool animation stories. We got a huge Robert Pattinson scoop, maybe an Adolescence follow-up, and another British show starting with SNL, but the UK. But let's jump into our review of the week. Timestamps below if you only want want to listen to the non-spoiler section, then jump to what else I watched, where I have so much stuff to talk about. But let's do this. Let's talk Warfare. Warfare is a 2025 war film coming in at an hour and 35 minutes. It is a brisk watch. It does not stop. Directed by Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland. Written by Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland. Budget of $20 million allegedly, but some people are saying this is the most expensive A24 film. I don't know if that's true, but I can definitely believe why it's $20 million. Reviews are very positive. 93% on Rotten Tomatoes with a 93% audience score. 7.9 on IMDb. 3.7 on Letterboxd. Keep in mind, I saw this on Wednesday and I'm checking all these scores Friday morning, so it might change after the weekend, but still, very good scores and very wide positive reviews. The synopsis for Warfare: a platoon of American Navy SEALs on a surveillance mission gone wrong in insurgent territory. A boots-on-the-ground story of modern warfare and brotherhood, told in real time and based on the memory of the people who lived it. The film stars a knockout cast. This is going to be a long list, so settle down. DeFaro Wunate plays Ray Mendoza, who directed and wrote the film. Cosmo Jarvis plays Elliot. Joseph Quinn plays Sam. Will Poulter plays Eric. Charles Melton plays Jake. Kit Connor plays Tommy. Taylor John Smith plays Frank. Michael Gandolfini plays Lieutenant McDonald. Adrian Bradley plays Sergeant Loreas. Noah Santino plays Brian. Henry Zaga plays Aaron. Finn Bennett plays John. Alex Brockdorf plays Mikey. Evan Holtzman plays Brock. Aaron McKenzie plays Kelly. Joe McCauley plays Mo. Laurie Duncan plays Pete. Jake Lampert plays Ted. Aaron Deakins plays Bob. Hyder Ali plays Cedar. Seema Pollitt plays Alia. Nathan Alte plays Farid. Aso Sharabayani plays Samir. Amira Dutton plays Sama. And Inbal Amaram plays Amira. It is a great cast. It is a stacked cast. Literally every young actor you know pretty much is in this movie. But let's get into my initial thoughts on Warfare. Look, you guys all know how much I really enjoyed Civil War last year, and Warfare, like that, is a great theatrical experience. I saw this in IMAX, and it's probably one of my favorite recent IMAX releases. I'm a little bummed they're not keeping the IMAX release. It was a one-night showing in IMAX only because The Amateur actually took the IMAX slot after. I'm surprised Minecraft didn't keep it. I thought if some movie's going to take it, probably it would be a Minecraft movie, but The Amateur is now showing in my IMAX theater, so I saw this on Wednesday night. I had to miss Survivor and watch it later just so I could see this in IMAX, but it was totally worth it because it was a phenomenal watch in IMAX. The Civil War discourse was intense, but I think Warfare is going to be a whole other thing, and there's a lot I want to unpack with this movie. It's not perfect to me, and I think there's a lot you do need to sift through with your feelings, and a war movie cannot be apolitical truly. Like even Civil War last year, Alex Garland said he tried to keep it apolitical as possible so everyone could watch it, but it still has political messaging in general. Of course, I don't think I need to explain that to you guys. You're smart. But as for Warfare, the whiplash, as I said, going from a Minecraft movie last week to going to this was insane because this is very raw, very intense, very, very, very claustrophobic, and we're going to break it all down. But let's start with the performances. It's a massive cast, as I just read to you, so I don't want to go through everyone, but I really want to just focus on some of our main players right now, like DeFaro Wunate as Ray Mendoza. You might know him from Reservoir Dogs, a very popular show. I think he is really good in this, playing Ray Mendoza, the director-writer. I think it's a very difficult task playing someone that's on set with you. Like, playing your own director is a really weird thing, I must imagine. There's a lot of pressure on that. I don't think it's ever indulgent to the point where Ray is like this holy leader of this group. I think it's just a very honest depiction, and like the tagline of this movie is everything is based on memory. This is just how these guys all remember it from interviews, and it's all playing out in front of us. I do think it's a very honest depiction of Ray Mendoza, which I enjoyed. And same with Will Poulter as Eric. I think he's the leader of this group, like he is the CO, something like that, where he is ordering everyone and telling everyone what they're going to do. He's very good, and he seems no older than like 30 or something like that. Everyone in this group is extremely young, but like Will Poulter in specific, like he's leading this group and he doesn't seem like that old or super experienced. He has moments where he's questioning himself, and Joseph Quinn is Sam, just fantastic, and it's a brutal watch. He's great, but it's very uncomfortable. There's a lot of really dark stuff that happens in this film, and Cosmo Jarvis as Elliot as well, Kit Connor as Tommy, Charles Melton as Jake are all really good in their own unique ways. I think all the performances are so varied, and there's a lot of different feelings all being represented in one story, which I really liked, and showing the different types of reactions to these situations and how soldiers can react, I guess. But I do want to give special shout out to Nathan Alte and Hyder Ali as the soldiers who are, I want to say they're like Iraqi translators or like liaisons for our American soldiers. They did a good job sort of bridging the two sides in a way, or the two cultures, and I do really enjoy what Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland do with them, and they do make, I think, an effort to be poignant about their characters, but we'll get to that. The entire cast is phenomenal, though, I have to say. Like, everyone is delivering a great performance, and they have a difficult job because there aren't really character arcs in this film. It's just 95 minutes playing out in real time. Let's get into the story, though, because, you know, that's an important thing. It's 95 minutes, and it's a fascinating 95-minute tribute to an event in a man's life. Everything is based on memory, which really explains maybe its one-sidedness, you could say. There are many times when you could be watching this and you question that one-sidedness, but then you do have to realize it's all based on memories, and you can't really give memories that aren't yours. And I think even as limited and maybe apolitical as this is in some ways, there are still little things that you can hint at bigger reckonings or reconciliations happening. And this is more a simulation and recreation than anything. You know, it's not trying to be this big Hollywood tale. The movie's very unapologetically saying, here's what happened from my perspective, do with that what you will. This is simply one man who teamed up with a director, wrote and directed a story about something tragic that happened in his life or something scarring in his life, and it was tragic for a lot of people. And you know, there is that Frankie Boyle quote that everybody uses, Americans are the only people that will invade your country and start a war and then come back and make a movie about it 20 years later. Definitely, you could apply that to this film. It's, you know, about, oh, poor us, and this is so horrible. But at the same time, I do think the story here does have a lot of value about the warnings of war. There are parts where I'm like, is this worshiping this group? I don't think so. Or what are we meant to think of this group? And I want to save that for a little bit for later. I do want to start with just the sort of technical stuff and the feelings I get from this movie, starting with the directing. Again, Alex Garland, if you listened to the podcast last year, you know Civil War, I really enjoyed it as a movie, as frustrating as the apolitical nature was of that film. Again, Alex Garland is amazing here. His collaboration with Mendoza brings to life such a realistic depiction. It's really crazy how just it feels like documentary style where you're just following these guys for 95 minutes. And I don't think that ever gets old as a gimmick, that we're just following them for 95 minutes. And it's not boring at all because it's just military jargon and just following these guys go through this mission. It is so intense and so claustrophobic. There's no shaky cam. There's no glamour. It's just an honest, realistic depiction of how this went down for these people. And I even think maybe they add some things to try and talk to bigger things, but to me, it wasn't really enough. The directing is fantastic, and how they use space, how they really shrink everyone down and they focus on certain people's faces and moments, and they really just let things breathe. And the editing is fantastic, and I think it's really important if you're going to do a 95-minute depiction of this one mission, or this one, really, it's an evac in some ways, but I think the editing really has to be important. It rarely jumps or cuts to a complete other location. We are really following one team throughout this whole thing. I think there's two real jumps in this film, and that's it. But I've mentioned the word claustrophobic a few times because I'm struggling to remember the last movie I watched, specifically in theaters, where I did feel like I'm closed in a space almost. I was really sucked into this film, and I really was surprised by my screening. I saw it Wednesday night, like I said, at the advanced IMAX screening, and everyone was silent in my theater, other than one jump scare that really got me. I just felt like the walls were closing in, and I was soaked in sweat. My armpits were crazy after the film because I could not calm down during the movie. I felt it, and my heart was racing, and it does such a good job of building tension and maintaining that adrenaline for 60 minutes after like 30 minutes of build-up. I can't praise this movie enough with how it builds tension. The first 30 minutes are them at this training camp or a base camp or whatever, where they're all just like, you know, it's showing their camaraderie, and then we cut immediately after like 3 minutes to the mission starting. The trailer shows them basically at the start of the movie where they're all standing in that room, the Joseph Quinn's doing push-ups and stuff like that. That's the first 30 minutes, and then the rest of the movie is them trying to escape the building. Like, it is a phenomenal story to tell, and it's a very poignant story to tell, and I think it's a great lesson on a technical standpoint as a movie in building tension and how you maintain adrenaline, because I was was never, at any point, I was never like, let's wrap it up. I don't really care about what's happening here. It's the whole time. It's just moving you from room to room or keeping you in the same room, but things are being added that add to this tension. And it's phenomenal filmmaking. And I think sound design wise, I don't want to talk about the Oscars already, but I could see this at the Oscars next year for sound design. IEDs, gunfire, tanks, overwhelming radio chatter. Like you see in the trailer when a grenade gets thrown in their room or they blow the claymores on the roof and everyone kind of gets their bell rung, as they say. Like this could just be Concussion, the motion picture, because everyone has a concussion in this film. The sound design specifically in IMAX, and this is why I'm so bummed they aren't going to keep playing this in IMAX at my theater, because I would go again tonight. The sound design of gunfire and bullets whizzing you can hear throughout the theater surrounding you was mind-blowing, and I'm struggling to remember another film or one of the best jobs I've seen with sound design and making everything feel so real around you. And again, that plays into your nervousness and the intensity while you're watching. Like there's one moment where a character, after there was an explosion, their ears are ringing, and then when they come back in and the overwhelming radio chatter was fantastic. Like I could feel in the room attention rising and people were starting to really just like get nervous. And you know, most of the times you go to a movie, you hear one person talking at some point or some whisper. I don't think I heard a single whisper. I didn't see anyone even take their phone out like to check it dimly. It was crazy. Like my theater was very locked in. And also there's no score. Like there's one song in this movie and that's it, I think. Otherwise there's zero score. It's just action. And of course the cinematography by David J. Thompson is just fantastic work. There's some mesmerizing shots in this film. And I do really want to commend the actors for their commitment to accuracy and technical attention. There was never a moment, as I said, where I felt like someone was trying to give an intense action performance. Everyone felt like they were really just trying to play the mission, try to play this, you know, simulation and recreation as realistically as possible. No one's going for any big hero lines or badass lines. I mean, even the dialogue wise, there's not really actual dialogue in this film that's like storytelling. It is just military jargon and just them. The dialogue is the mission. It's fascinating how with no real dialogue of people like speaking their emotions or speaking how they're feeling, you still pick up so much. And this is a huge lesson to, I think, all these second screen entertainment people making shows or making movies that are meant to be second screen entertaining. You're missing out on making a great story with zero real dialogue and just emotions and people doing certain movements that you could tell like, oh, this guy's nervous, this guy's broken. So I just really loved the more lack of dialogue or more lack of real explaining to the audience. This movie never holds your hand, and that's what I really enjoyed. But let's get into some of the heavier themes I want to talk about. I really enjoyed this movie, but I think we do need to talk about the political nature of it. This is a very controversial war. I'm Canadian. We aren't taught about the Iraq War from a Canadian perspective, but as for Alex Garland's politics with this film, you watch a movie like Civil War, and you'll remember in my review last year, and a lot of people that watched the movie talked about how frustrating it was that they tried to make the movie apolitical, not one-sided, and be like, oh yes, it's a Republican president. In hindsight, I think that movie made a great choice doing that. This movie, very apolitical, does not talk about the nature of Iraq, doesn't talk about how many people died, how many locals were killed by American soldiers, doesn't talk about the torture of Iraqis in different prisons, and it doesn't even talk about how many American soldiers were lost, which I was very, very surprised by. You know, if you're going to make a movie about the Iraq War, I think at the end of the film, you could at least put like some kind of blurb of text saying how many lives were lost on both sides to show how deadly of a war it was. Like what the Iraq War or the war on terror in general was 20 years long. So many people were lost. Even in this movie in general, like you can see the devastation that happens to the neighborhood that were closed in. And I don't know, it doesn't really work here, the apolitical nature. I understand what they're trying to do. I do think there are little things that you can pick up how Ray Mendoza reflects on the war, so I will give him some credit for that. But I think maybe if Alex Garland wasn't involved, Ray Mendoza probably would have added something else. But when you're comparing these two movies in hindsight, how am I going to feel about warfare a year from now? Because a year on exactly from Civil War, came out last April, right? A year on from Civil War, I think, like I said, the apolitical nature of that film really works to saying that any president could do this, run for a third term, but realistically, I think everybody in the world knows which side would do that, but it is an important lesson to all Americans that you do not want civil war. When a country is torn apart, that is not something that is glamorous, glorifying that we're going to defend our country in a civil war or our side in a civil war, rather. That's not something you want, and I think that was a real wake-up call or trying to be a warning to all Americans. Whereas Warfare, I think its unwillingness to give a larger statement at the end of the film, or just at all in the film, is sort of what makes it feel not as impactful at the end. It's more like you're just watching a Call of Duty mission for an hour and a half rather than there being some lesson that they want to share with you, or some political lesson or some warning. I think you need to take it away yourself, and I do think just saying something in general would have worked. And like, what does the movie even say about Iraq in general? I do think there are little hints at what Ray Mendoza took away from the Iraq war, what he thinks about the people, and there is the involvement of this family whose house they take over for the mission, and I think that inclusion is important. Honestly, Ray Mendoza, in my opinion, is framing the Americans as invaders. I don't think he's shying away from that. I think he is constantly showing that they are in people's neighborhoods, and yes, they're fighting an unrecognizable military, and they were, looking at citizens, and they're basically doing surveillance on regular looking people in Iraq, and they're fighting against guerrilla warfare, but the houses that they're taking over are family houses, and there's one moment where they show a snapshot of the house they're in with someone standing there, and that really took me back, whoa, they're really trying to underline that this is someone's home that they're destroying. So I do think Ray Mendoza feels bad about the war in Iraq, and that's why I think I don't totally hate this movie, and I'm frustrated by the apolitical messaging, but I do think it's a good warning about the dangers of combat and that it is not glamorous, and this movie does not try to depict these men as heroes even, or as these, noble warriors. It's showing them as, yes, they're heroes and they're brave for risking their lives for each other, but their cause was not heroic. This is a 95-minute movie about how fucked up this situation was, how dangerous warfare is. Hence the title. This is a warfare simulation that's meant to be, I think, a wake-up call to people. And honestly, when you have President Trump in office that's already trying to mess around with the Middle East and threatening invasion in different countries, this is a wake-up call to Americans that you don't want this. This takes lives, it takes limbs, it ruins people's lives mentally, emotionally, it ruins their relationships and how they cope with the rest of their life. Yes, if you use enough stuff from the US military, I think the Department of Defense or something like that has to approve the messaging that you're having. Sure, you could argue, I think, that this film is propaganda if that's what you want to come away with. There's enough threads in this, specifically the end credits, I would say. That's when I was a little bit okay, you kind of lost me there, and that's why I took my score down a bit. But I do think this film is trying to underline the devastation that happened in the local area as well, not just to the Americans. And I mentioned in my Letterboxd review that in my time in university, I was originally, for my dissertation, I was going to write about films about the Bosnian War and how they explain extramilitary violence, whether it be rape, torture, murder. So I was going to be studying how these films depict Bosnian Serb soldiers that committed war crimes in the Bosnian War, and I have always been very interested in Hollywood films about war. What are they saying about each side? Whose story are they telling? How do they cater to the box office? And one of the texts that I read, I can maybe put the book in the show notes if I can find it. I can't remember who it's by or what it's called. It's called the Hollywoodization of war films, that there is no true representation of war because there's always something that needs to be a studio note, or every film has a monetary goal that they need to fulfill. And I have to give this movie credit. There really is no Hollywoodization of the story. Even though they got the most handsome actors in young Hollywood right now, they pretty much shave all their heads, they give them ugly mustaches. They're not trying to make anyone look like an action hero. And sure, there are little moments that you could label it as throwing a bone to the victims of this war, but I sort of felt like this movie is a man coming to terms with his involvement in this unethical invasion of another country, and at the same time how it affected him and his friends who were protecting each other in this fucked up situation. And he does it in the most respectful way possible, that he's not trying to make it look glamorous or make himself even look like a hero. Like I said before, having himself in the film, he could make himself look like this amazing hero, and he was the real leader of the group, and he was the most moral one of them all. But even himself, he has some flaws. And it is interesting that they first released this film in Russia and Israel on April 10th, as opposed to other places it was coming out April 11th. I don't know if it's like that with every film, but it is interesting that it's coming out there first to show the devastating effects on the generations of your country that you're forcing to invade other countries, or that you're getting to sign up and invade other countries, and telling them this is a noble sacrifice. When did we win the war on terror? war? No, we didn't. So I do think this movie has value and is a warning, just like Civil War last year. Maybe its messaging is a little bit more frustrating, but I do think they're trying to avoid having a piece of propaganda. The movie's valuable. It gives closure not just for Ray Mendoza, who fought in a corrupt invasion. This movie is a wider indication, and I think the fact that so many people are willing to engage with it and talk about what they find problematic, like if you hated this film, that's absolutely fine, and I could get why you did. If you absolutely loved it, I understand why. But I think this movie is valuable because it's starting a conversation, and it's an indication that people are ready to start talking about the Iraq War and Afghanistan and these wars that we need to come to terms with as a society now that it's been, 20 years plus. But I will say, if you haven't seen this movie and you're just immediately writing it off as propaganda and you're not even going to engage with it, I think that's a little bit of an unhealthy behavior. It's not made by some crazy alt-right guy that's clearly being racist and, being xenophobic or anything like that. They do show a bit of the Iraq perspective, even though everything is based on memory, and Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland still did take a couple of steps to at least show how the translators operated with them and how the local family was affected, and they are showing that this is someone's home that they're in. But all right, like I did last week, let's get into 2 stars and a wish. If you don't know, the stars are things I liked about the film. The wish is something I wish they did better. So what would I do? 2 stars and a wish for Warfare. Well, star 1, sound design is like nothing I've ever experienced before. If you were shocked by those last 30 minutes of Civil War, this movie is triple that. Star 2, the direction. I think this is just a phenomenally well-directed action film. It really uses the space well that they're in this one house, but I feel like they really frame everyone super well to know where everyone is spatially and how they angle things to show things in the background, as well as they're not focusing on who they're fighting very specifically. It's sort of just like figures moving around in the background, which adds to the tension. My wish, of course, just give us a bigger message to sit with, please. Just even a little statistic thing in the credits to show how devastating this war was for both Americans and Iraqis and the amount of civilians killed. It's frustrating to make a war film that, as Mendoza has said himself in a bunch of press screenings, it's not a political movie. It is a political movie, and people are going to engage with it politically. Once it's out of your hands as the filmmaker, you don't get to decide whether it's political or unpolitical because other people are going to take it and run with it. But having said that, overall, this movie is so intense, claustrophobic, and disturbing. I'm really sad it's not playing in IMAX because, as I said, I would totally watch it again. But Warfare is a difficult movie to talk about because I really do see why people would argue this is propaganda, but at the same time, I do want to give them some credit that they're at least throwing a bone to the other side and being like, yeah, we ruined your lives as well. And I do think this is a good start of a larger conversation. Just like Civil War was last year, this is a good conversation starter for people that want to engage with this movie. So I gave Warfare 3.5 out of 5 stars for me. I think some of the messaging lets me down. The lack of character arcs can be a little bit strange at times, but it's still technically one of the most impressive films I've seen. Let's get into spoilers. All right, let's talk some spoilers for Warfare. I want to talk about the opening of the film. The fact that they open the film with Call on Me and all the guys watching the music video, and I think it does a good job of kind of showing not their immaturity, but the fact that they are all young men who still like to watch these, sexy music videos, and they're crazy about girls. And it is a little bit haunting, specifically with the juxtaposition of the next scene, which was immediately cuts to the mission at night. And again, the cinematography, another movie, you wouldn't be able to see anything at night in this film, but they do such a great job lighting the film. I just think we should go out of our way to highlight excellent lighting jobs in films because let's be real, some shows and movies, if you watch them in daytime, you're not going to see a damn thing if you don't have blackout curtains, but this movie does a great job. But I just really enjoyed the such joyous camaraderie at the start of the film but then the next 30 minutes are just them being scared and locked in, and it's just a really great opening and has such a drastic difference to the rest of the film. These guys, they're not all experienced soldiers of 20 years or even 10 years. They all seem like they're in their early to mid 20s or approaching their 30s maybe. And they're not looking at sophisticated art in their spare time. They're young guys in their early 30s who are goofballs and watch horny music videos. And I think in some ways the apolitical nature of this film proves that they're not trying to show their mission as this noble cause. They're just talking about how in this situation, they were all there for each other and had to battle battle together and try to save each other's lives, you know? But let's talk about the translators. I want to talk about them. And this is where I think Ray Mendoza deserves some credit and everyone that shared their memories, because it is very clear. Joseph Quinn playing Sam, he is leading the group as they're going to go out at the start to try and evac Elliot in the tank. And they very purposefully are constantly giving the two translators the worst jobs and sort of treating them like sacrificial lambs. They send them to the rooftop or whatever, or to the bottom floor. They're like, you guys are on bottom floor while we're going to stay up top. Then when Elliot gets hit by the grenade, they send the translators out first into the street and then follow them into the smoke. And that's when the IED goes off. And I thought at that specific point, and both the translators die, of course, at that specific point, I felt like, okay, at least it's not complete propaganda of being like, oh, these guys were pointless and useless. You can see the fear these translators have. You can see how the Americans are treating them and honestly not really respecting them. And who knows, they probably aren't soldiers, you know, like the people these guys were all fighting were not trained nearly as much as the American military. So it was nice to see that representation of the translators who were working with the Americans and how they are even more green than the American soldiers. Like Kit Connor's character Tommy has very clearly never experienced anything like that. He sort of looks like the youngest of the bunch other than Ray. But the translators themselves, like, who knows? They could have been bankers. They could have been they could have been school teachers or whatever, but now their country is being invaded and they decide to work with the Americans. So, and I think the fact that they die so early in the film when that first IED goes off is really a underlining thing from Mendoza to say, like, yeah, we threw them to the slaughter pretty much. And I think it shows guilt. And the IED, I didn't want to talk about it too much in the non-spoiler section because it's just briefly shown in the trailer, but I don't think like the full effect of it is shown. But that was some of my favorite cinematography and my favorite on-set like effects that they're doing with the smoke, the colors, the haze, looking up at the sun. And it was the point in the movie, I can't remember the last time I jumped out of my seat so much and just my heart was racing when the IED went off, because it's this slow, tense buildup that they're going to try and bust out of this house, run to the tank, get Elliot out of here, and then get back into the house. But as soon as they step outside, the two translators and the Americans are following just shortly behind them. It's the loudest bang, and it's so sudden, and just everything around you gets shook. And oh my God, I saw everyone sitting near me all shook and jumped, and I was like, holy shit, that scared me. And the sound design, again, the movie is so loud in IMAX, and the IED honestly had my ears ringing a little bit. And then like the next 20 minutes with the ringing sounds coming in and out, but as well this green haze. I think they said there's like phosphorus in the air or something like that's on Elliot because he's the one they're trying to get out. And it's crazy. I think it just looks amazing, and they did so well in that moment. And like I said, I think they do show how much they had to sort of bend rules, and they were on their own, and this invasion was not well planned, and this was sort of a pointless fight because they even have it. They try to get it extracted once. Obviously, the IED goes off. Then later in the movie, when the two teams join up with each other in the house, Charles Melton, I think, he's the one that tells the guy that's on the radio, you need to act like the CEO, or you need to lie and tell them that we give approval, because they were waiting from like a higher power to approve them being extracted. So I think that was an important inclusion, that they were like, yeah, we did things that we shouldn't have, and we did lie to our own side as well. And, you know, we were waiting in somebody's house with the family still there the entire time. And there are a lot of rules being bent, or guys being like, oh, I need more morphine or whatever it is. And there's no real guidelines or no exact perfect way to do anything. It's just this group of young guys trying to get out of this house in this messy situation, and their leadership sort of falling apart. Like Will Poulter, he immediately is very clearly concussed, and same with Ray, who has to care for his other guys. And I didn't want to talk about it fully in non-spoilers, obviously, but Will Poulter, you know, you can see he's kind of trying to hold on throughout the movie, and then towards like 30 minutes left, he just goes into the room where the family is and just sits down, because you can see he is not there mentally. And when Charles Melton shows up, he tells him like, dude, you got to take over because I don't know what I'm doing. And he just seems so out of it. Like you can see how mentally hazy he is after the Claymores explosion, which I think shook everybody because they have to detonate these Claymores on the roof. But you can see everyone's kind of fucked up from it. But I want to talk about the sort of end of the movie, as well as just the use of the family, which I spoke about briefly in non-spoilers. But at night, they move into this family's house and they tell them, be quiet. They put them all in one room. They break down a wall because it's a double apartment building or whatever. And I do think the use of the family and the family photo where there's the one, I think it's the dad standing in front of the house to show he's lived here all his life, is a really important touch. And they're showing that like they're not really there to protect the family at all. The family are scared of them. The family were scared of everything going on, and they're not being like, oh, thank God the Americans are here. They're angry the Americans are here. And that's an important distinction, and it's never trying to portray the family as a nuisance to this mission. The family's feelings are very validated the entire movie, and it's just a mess because they don't speak English, they don't speak Arabic, they have their two translators, but after the translators die, there's very little like communication. There's only a couple guys. I think Mike Gandolfini's character speaks Arabic. So I did appreciate at least the use of the family to show the Americans were feared as these invaders and these strangers coming into our home who are allegedly fighting a country for a just cause in our homes and in our neighborhoods where we grew up, and we have old family photos. And I don't know, it's very fascinating at the end of the film as well how they frame the Americans. Like I said, in non-spoilers, they do sort of show the Americans as invaders. I don't think they're trying to show them as these heroes. They're these, young, silly guys that liked watching music videos like any other person in their 20s, and they're these horny young dudes with a bit of a bro culture who just happen to be invading another country and be stuck in this fucked up war that their government put them into. And of course, there's no draft, there's no conscription, nobody was forced to go into this war. This was volunteer basis, so they are all victims of their own circumstance and their country's circumstance in many ways. But specifically, the final shot of the film before we get a really strange credit sequence I want to talk about is after the Americans get out with the tanks. They've all extracted themselves successfully. They've escaped. Everyone made it except the two translators. There's this, quiet calm and almost peacefulness that comes to the neighborhood where we see all of the soldiers that were fighting walk into the street, and the family, the dad comes out and just looks at his home and says, come out into the living room, it's okay. And you just see the devastation of this home, and it does leave you on a note that the Americans were not just in doing this. This was not a noble mission. The Americans were invading another country, and there's a danger and an immoral factor in invading another country. There was a real peacefulness and like a thank God they're gone type feeling after the Americans were taken out in the last shot. And I do really like that there's no follow-up after that final shot of the street and all the fighters going into the street. It's just, it ends on them, and then we get this really, I understand what they're going for, but the whole entire credits are showing behind the scenes of everyone working with Ray Mendoza and the military supervisors, and like it did leave a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth of like, wow, isn't it so cool how accurate we're being, and we're like playing dress up as soldiers. And of course, like Ray Mendoza, this is a tribute to his friend Elliot, and he says for Elliot and shows Elliot visiting set. He lost one of his legs unfortunately and is in a wheelchair and is visiting set, and like that is a touching moment. But then he thanks the group for like being there and answering the call or whatever like that. And I think in that moment I'm fine with the for Elliot of course, but I do think there should have been some statistic or something, like I said, in non-spoilers, showing the devastation of this war, how many Americans gave their lives and how many civilians were killed in Iraq. And I don't think they should have had the behind the scenes thing. But I think that's actually all I have for spoilers. I'm probably gonna see this movie again because I have a lot of feelings that are hard to articulate. Go read my Letterboxd review as well. I wrote a whole blurb about my understanding of war films and how we understand war films as well. But that's been Warfare. Again, 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it is a very technically impressive, entertaining film, but there could have been little things that make it a little bit more poignant and educational in some ways. But let's move into what else I watched. All right, I've got 4 movies and several TV shows to talk about. Let's start with actually a book. I read Batman and the Monster Men by Matt Wagner last week. It's the first part of a 2-part series. So Batman and the Mad Monk, I haven't got to reading it yet. I'm going to read it this weekend for my Sunday night video. But Batman and the Monster Men is so good. It's sort of like this spiritual follow-up to Batman Year One. And it says that in the story, like that it is very closely tied to Batman Year One. A lot of the same designs. The characters even talk talk about what happened in Batman Year One. And as I've spoken about before, Batman Year One is one of my favorite Batman stories. Like the animated movie, I love. The comic I've read multiple times. I've read that book. It's one of my favorite comics in general of anything, not just Batman stories, but Batman Year One just rocks. And I really love the vibe continuation for Batman and the Monster Men, and how it feels like it's pulling from Batman the Animated Series, Batman the Arkham games. It's just, it feels so rich story-wise that it's not afraid to get a little cheesy and romantic, but it also has Hugo Strange, which we've never seen Hugo Strange in like a live-action film. And I love seeing the start of his obsession with Batman. So it's a great book. If you haven't read them, it's a 2-part series. I would totally recommend it. And I'm going to be reading Batman and the Mad Monk. Look on the social media for the reviews. But let's move into TV. All right. Well, we finally got back to watching Survivor Season 1, and it's really starting to heat up. We watched episode 6, episode 7, and episode 10 because our website that we are watching it on legally doesn't have episode 9 where Jenna went home. So we saw Gretchen, Greg, and Jervis voted home. But so far, season 1 is really entertaining. It's fun to see how loose and uncoordinated everything is, and Jeff is just so funny. We're going to watch a bunch more episodes this weekend, so I will keep you posted, of course. And then we got The White Lotus, episode 8 of season 3, Amor Fati, devastating. I think the season did have a lot of messy parts that didn't really go anywhere, and I think it is probably the weakest written season, but there's still so many things I loved about the season, like Saxon, a character I absolutely hated at the start of the season, and by episode 8, I would do anything to protect him, because you can tell there is someone there that has gone down the wrong path, recognizes their mistakes and their behaviors are unhealthy, and so quickly makes a change. I really enjoyed just how every storyline except the Rick one wrapped up, really. I think the Rick one was just weird. I don't think there was really a plan writing the season. Maybe there were rewrites or something like that, but just him not saying, I'm your dad, or he was going to tell you he's his father. I don't know how I felt about that at the same time. Maybe he could have killed him anyways. That would have been an interesting twist, but it just felt like it was very last minute and slipped in at the last second when it already felt a little bit obvious that like, okay, clearly Rick's dad might be alive. Maybe he's his dad. And when it was revealed, I was kind of like, okay. However, the Rick and Chelsea death scene was devastating. But The White Lotus season 3, it was still a really good season of television. Like, I would recommend it. If you were a White Lotus fan, go check it out. But I also started a new television show, Hacks, the comedy on HBO. I've watched all of season 1. I've watched the first 6 episodes of season 2. I'm going to watch it as the new season's going as well. It is so damn funny. It has great writing. It has so many fun stand-up things and like industry things it's talking about. I totally get why it's winning all of these awards because it is just so much fun. If you haven't seen Hacks, go check it out. Then, of course, I watched Daredevil Born Again, episode 8. I said I wasn't a huge fan of episode 7, but they've seriously stepped it up this week. The cinematography of this episode was mesmerizing. Maybe some of the best cinematography we've had, like outside of Loki in a Disney Plus show and Andor. It was gorgeous. The use of blue for Bullseye, the use of red for Matt. I loved it. And the story is just like actually interesting this episode, and I feel like it's really ramping up for the finale next week. It feels like this show has just blown by, but at the same time, this weekend we have, The Last of Us, we have Andor starting soon, so I'm excited for the finale of Daredevil Born Again, but I think we're going to have a lot of better television shows coming in after. All right, Survivor 48, episode 7, Survivor Smack Talk. Say and Cedric voted out, and I do want to talk about this weird pattern. I'm not saying it's like anything on purpose or what's up with it, but it is strange to me that 4 out of 6 seasons where they've done the double elimination at the merge, 2 black players have been voted out, and remember Marianne called it out, Drea, and it is just a weird coincidence, or is it something? But then when you look at a macro level and you take a step back, I mean, obviously Say and Cedric were 2 good choices to go home this week, but like, I don't know, it just feels like every season it is maybe justified game-wise, but it is a weird thing that there's this pattern of constantly at this specific vote, at this specific time, 2 black players are getting voted out immediately. I don't know what to make of that. A lot of people have highlighted it online and being like, is this weird? Like, as an episode this week, it was enthralling. I totally get why Say was voted out and she wasn't made a member of the jury. I said in my prediction video, maybe there's a temptation to just get Say out because she's going to be a bitter jury member. Well, I love Say, and I listened to her exit interview, and she's really funny. She seems like a really cool person, and she even admitted like, yeah, they should have got me out because I would have been so bitter, and she's just really funny. I like someone with a bit of an ego going on the the show. You don't want everyone to be just boring game bots. Oh, let's all play with integrity. Let's all not lie to each other and let's make it to Final Five. Like, that's boring. David, Joe, Eva, all these people need to wake up and realize that's not how Survivor works. You're going to backstab each other. You're going to have to lie. You're going to have to vote each other out. You can't just hold hands until the end. Get over it. And it looks like next week we might have a bit of that reckoning. But as well, Cedric this week, he did get a tough draw, but the fact that he dropped in the challenge in 15 seconds and he struggled in every challenge, he's battled every day on the show. He's had some brutal tribal councils. It does make sense, again, why you would vote Cedric out in that situation. I was sort of hoping this week it would have been David and maybe Chrissy that went home, because Chrissy, it just felt like she wasn't really doing anything, but maybe you keep her as a number. And David, I don't know, he's just kind of annoying to me, but he's in the Integrity Alliance, so maybe you all team up to get him out, but he won immunity, so obviously that wasn't going to happen. So I don't know. Say and Cedric, of course it is probably two smart vote outs to happen this week, and from a macro level, just like not comparing it to any other season in the game, it made sense in that context, but it is just a weird pattern that we're having with all of these double eliminations, and like, what do you do about that? But let's talk about the Pit season finale, episode 15, maybe one of the best season finales I've seen, and one of just the best dramas I've watched. Like, it was such a clean, precise, entertaining season, absolutely devastating. I cannot wait to talk about it more in my YouTube video this month. I really just want to write down all of my thoughts. I might even go back and watch it before I record in a couple weeks, because it's just such a rich show with so many storylines going on, and the finale just ties things together so perfectly while also setting up so many amazing things for season 2, which is filming right now, and I'm so pumped. The Pit is honestly, is it my favorite TV show of the year so far? I don't know. Is it better than Severance? There are moments where I was like, maybe it is, but at the same time, Severance was so good. And then my final show this morning, I watched The Studio, episode 4. Amazing episode once again with Olivia Wilde. Zac Efron was so good in it. Seth Rogen is just continually impressing me every episode. Same with Ike Barinholtz, whose dad was in the episode this week as well. So if you're not watching The Studio, go check it out. Now let's finish the episode with my 4 movies I watched this week, starting with Tombstone. I wanted to watch a Val Kilmer film, so I was going to watch Batman Forever, but I was like, no, you know what? Let's watch a Val Kilmer role I haven't seen. So he is Doc Holliday in Tombstone. It's a classic cowboy movie. It's a justice revenge story in a small town. Tombstone is so damn entertaining. There's so many iconic lines, not just from Doc Holliday, but from Kurt Russell and everyone else. Like, so if you haven't seen Tombstone, a staple of Val Kilmer's career, one of his many, many amazing roles. That was from 1993. I think this week I'll watch Batman Forever and The Saint, but Tombstone I gave 4 stars. Then in theaters, we have 3 movies I saw in theaters now. The first one being Freaky Tales. Pedro Pascal is sort of like kind of the lead of this film, but I had only seen one trailer for this. This premiered at Sundance last year. It's had almost zero marketing. I don't know how anyone is going to hear about it other than just word of mouth, but I have to say, I had so much damn fun with this movie. I was the only one in my theater at like a 6 p.m. screening. You know, there could have been one other person, but there was nobody, and I had so much fun. It feels like a great homage to other films. Like Pulp Fiction, of course, is the one everyone's being like, oh, Freaky Tales is just like Pulp Fiction, and it's just so much fun. I think everyone gives great performances in it. I love the special effects, how kind of cheap it feels, and like low budget is so endearing and wholesome. But also Jay Ellis, who I know from Top Gun Maverick, is so good in it. He plays Sleepy Jones, Sleepy something, basketball player who was a real life basketball player, but he's so good in it, and I couldn't recommend it more. 4 stars. Then last night I saw another double feature. I watched Drop and The Amateur. Drop is Megan Fanny. She was in The White Lotus season 2. So my friend told me this, and I had no clue, but this actually comes from a woman that works at Smosh. She experienced this one incident where she was on a date and someone kept airdropping her photos, and it was super creepy. So I think she had the idea, and she got her husband and her brother or something like that, brother-in-law, to develop a movie based on it. It's a very interesting premise, but the execution was very rough to watch. Like, there is every scene, 1,000 cuts in every piece of dialogue, and it's just so overstimulating and feels very sloppy. I do also think maybe at some points the story becomes less interesting and we kind of lose the airdrop factor. At some point you just got to leave the date because it's the worst date I've ever seen in film. But it's actually the first thing I've ever watched with Brandon Sklenner, who was in the It Ends With Us movie or whatever. He's also in 1923, like a Yellowstone spinoff or something like that. But he is an actor that is, most touted to be the next Batman in the DCU. So I was curious to watch something with him and see what I think of him. And he's okay. I don't think he's the best actor. He's very charismatic, but I don't know if he can do, look, he could do the Bruce Wayne Batman, but I don't think he would be my first choice because of how bearded he is. He's too scraggly, but he is a good actor. Megan Fahey is great. I loved her in The White Lotus, and she's pretty good in this, but overall the movie was like a little bit choppy and just really is lost on the editing room floor, so I gave it 2.5 stars. Now ending the episode with The Amateur, which I saw last night in IMAX. The Amateur is one of those movies that I've been seeing the trailer for probably 6 months now before every movie I see. Like, doesn't matter what studio's putting out the movie I'm watching, you can guarantee The Amateur trailer is going to be playing before that movie and the featurette before the trailers even start. Oh my god, I'm so sick of seeing that trailer, but at the same time, I thought I was going to totally hate this movie and be like, oh, I'm just sick of this and I don't want to watch this, but I watched it and I gotta say I actually had a good time. I don't like Rami Malek. I don't think he's a great actor in my eyes. I think he's a little bit overhyped. He's a good actor, but he's a little bit overhyped. But I think he's actually pretty good in this, and it's kind of like Black Bag, where the movie is just so precise in what it's doing and just knows what it wants to do. Until the end of the film is where I felt like, oh, they don't know how to end this movie, do they? But in IMAX, it was fun to watch. I think it looked really nice. We have another couple of double features coming next week as well, and there's a movie I'm going to watch on Amazon this weekend, so lots of good stuff coming, as well as tons of TV shows starting this week. So what else I watched is going to continue to have lots of bangers, but as for this week, that's been what else I watched. And I think that's actually going to do it for episode 65, Warfare, a tough movie to talk about and really get my feelings clear and concise, because I thought it was one of the technically most impressive films I've watched in a long time. But the apoliticalness of it and the lack of just overall messaging, like, I'm not saying you need to beat us over the head like Don't Look Up and being like, climate change is bad. Obviously, war is bad, but I just would have liked some overall message that you have to share. But still, Warfare, I'd recommend watching it. But as always, please rate and review the show wherever you get your great podcasts like Watcher of All Things, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Acast. We are, of course, an Acast-produced show. If you are on the YouTube channel, where you can look forward to another video coming April 30th, talking about my favorite TV shows of 2025, please like, subscribe, comment underneath. Do you prefer Civil War? Do you prefer Warfare? What's actually your favorite Alex Garland film? I would say Ex Machina is still mine. That movie is just so good, but let me know below. Also, what are you watching right now? If you want to get in touch with us, you can email the show, watcherofallthings@gmail.com, or find me on social media. Instagram and Threads are at watcherofallthings. The TikTok account is at watcher.of.all.things. I post on social media every day. You can find other content other than just the podcast, of course. So follow me on all of the social media platforms as well. You can follow my personal Letterboxd account, KikiJ70. That's KIKIJ70. Comment under one of my reviews. You found me through the show. I'll follow you back. Let's build a little community. Next week, it's another banger. Sinners in IMAX. I am so excited. It's also Easter weekend. It's my birthday next week. I am pumped for next week. I'm so excited for Sinners as well. Like, the trailer has blown me away every time. The constant perspective ratio changes are just so cool in the trailer. I wish I had a 70mm IMAX theater near me, but this will have to do. So look forward to that next week. But as for now, thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for the kind words and the love. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.